Hey guys, what's going on? Jeb here, and in today's video, Bakkt says it is clear to launch Bitcoin futures next month. Now, if you guys tuned into yesterday's live stream, you may already know what's going on here, but in this video, I wanted to go ahead and dive into exactly what's going on here with Bakkt and why it's finally cleared to launch, why this deadline is almost certainly going to be met, or at least something similar to that deadline is going to be met. I'm going to run you start to finish on what this news story has to offer, why this is so important, why it's probably the most bullish news story that Bitcoin has had all year, or even in the last couple of years. We're going to be diving into extreme detail on this, but we also need to do a little bit of technical analysis on Bitcoin because, as you guys can see, we are currently in a pennant, and I want to do some analysis on which direction this looks like it's going to break out. So guys, we have a relatively simple lineup for today, so do remember, if you enjoyed today's video, to smash that like button and also hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. And I do want to remind you guys that we are running that sale on the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy. There's a link that you can use down below to come check out what we have to offer. You're going to get $40 off if you use the coupon code August2019 linked down below. If you want to learn how to do technical analysis so you can day trade, swing trade, invest, do whatever you want to do in these markets, you need to know how to do it. You need to invest in your education. Guys, people invest $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year in their education. They get out of college 4 years later and they can only find a job at Starbucks. For $159, you can learn a very valuable skill like learning how to trade cryptocurrency markets. We had a guy in the Discord server make $20,000 off of $4,000 capital leverage trading the other day. So check that out. Link is in the description. All right, guys. So with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into some technical analysis here on Bitcoin. I want to go ahead onto the minute chart and show you guys exactly what happened yesterday because we saw some massive movements happen following this news breakout. As you guys can see here on the minute chart, Bitcoin was in this relatively large pennant, if you're looking at it on the minute chart, from about the beginning of August the 15th all the way up until we broke out at about 11:30 Eastern Standard Time in the morning yesterday. The very first thing I want to talk about in this video is the power of news. We had some people in the live stream yesterday not really agreeing with the fact that news can move markets, and I want to talk about that for a little bit because that's a very important piece of technical and fundamental analysis, is understanding that news most certainly does move markets and how news moves markets. Yesterday's live stream kicked off somewhere around here. We started live streaming specifically because of this news story because, like I said, this is probably one of the biggest events in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies this entire year. But guys, I want to show you something. This news story has been updated ever since then, so it isn't showing the actual time that this went live, but I remember this article went live at 1500 hours, 18 minutes UTC yesterday. You subtract 4 from that to get Eastern Standard Time where I am and where this chart is located. That means that this news story went live on this very minute candlestick where this vertical line is. This is the exact minute that this news story went live, and CoinDesk, this article was the one that broke this news story. Everybody learned about it because of this news story, and then they went to the blog post that Bakkt made. And guys, this is really important because, as you can see, the very next minute we had a small pump, and over the next half an hour or so, Bitcoin would rally 3, nearly 4% if you use the Wixes. So guys, it's very important that you understand that news can move markets, and news most certainly did yesterday. It was by no means a guarantee that Bitcoin would break bullish out of this pennant, and in fact, the technicals were saying that we were probably going to break bearish out of it. But a news story can just completely override technicals, especially when it's one as bullish as what we saw yesterday, and that's exactly what we saw happen. So from there, guys, Bitcoin went into a series of pennants and continued to rally higher and started trading sideways after topping out around $10,540. From there, Bitcoin has gone into another pennant here, and we can actually use a little bit of technical analysis to go ahead and analyze this because the breakout was caused by news. I think it's undeniable, especially because of the timing. That would be some wild correlation if that was just coincidence. That was most definitely a causal relationship. It's very hard to do technical analysis on a market when news is moving it, but right now the news has calmed down. The news story's broke. A lot of this has been priced in, at least for the time being, up until launch. Like I said, we'll talk about the news front of this in a little while, but now I want to do some analysis on this consolidation pattern right in front of us because this is a really important one, guys. Like I said, the last couple of weeks have been big decision points for Bitcoin. Whether or not we're going to go to the upside or to the downside is not yet determined, and Bitcoin can do either. Bitcoin could rally and just break straight through resistance with this news story under its belt and with some other bullish things that are happening on the technicals, or Bitcoin could fall and crash all the way down to like $8,900 and set a bottom end down there. It is not determined what's going to happen yet, even though we've had some big bullish news. This is going to give a small pump for the day, as it did yesterday, but a lot of this news story right here, a lot of it, even though it may be one of the biggest news stories of this entire year, is already priced into Bitcoin, and we're back to relying on technicals. So let me show you something, guys. Right now, we're on the 4-hourly chart. You guys were asking me to be very clear about what chart we're on. If you look right up here, this says 240. That's 240 minute, and right up here, you can see the time frame that we're on. As you guys can see, Bitcoin is currently below and kind of testing the 4-hourly 20 exponential moving average. Bitcoin, when it's above that moving average, is very often in a rally. We can look back in history here to see that. When it's above it, it's in a rally. When it's kind of not sure what it wants to do, it's trading sideways, and when it's below it, it's in a downtrend. Right now, Bitcoin is doing the whole kind of trading sideways, trying to break bullish out of it thing, and that's where this consolidation pattern that we're looking at comes in. I want to see Bitcoin break break bullish here and get above that 20 EMA, because that would give bullish strength for the medium term for like the next couple of days, and that's the kind of strength that we need to see Bitcoin push even higher here. Now, there are some good signs, and a couple of those good signs will be that the RSI is recovering quite rapidly with this bottom that we put in, and also on the 4-hourly chart, we do have bullishness on the MACD. Now, albeit this bullishness is kind of tapering off, we're seeing a little tiny bit of convergence of bearishness on the MACD. As you can see here, these two last lines, these two last histogram bars, excuse me, are showing that the MACD is converging on itself, but not very quickly. A lot of that's just because of the way Bitcoin's moving right now. That's not necessarily indicative of anything. And also, guys, while we haven't had a reversal and a move away from divergence to convergence of the MACD lines on the daily chart, we can see that the divergence is slowing down, and it looks like there's going to be a reversal in these two lines coming in the next couple of days. If we do start to see that, that'll be an early warning sign that we may be seeing a bullish cross on the MACD like a week from now. So guys, I think there's reason to believe that this might break bullish, but I'm not totally convinced. Right before the recording of this video, if we come in here, we could actually see that Bitcoin just a few minutes ago, about 15 minutes ago at the time of recording this, was falling below this uptrend of support that it had set for itself, because Bitcoin has come down here and tested so many times. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, now 5 times in a small break. Now we're recovering from it. Guys, I also want to point this out. The volume isn't looking great. Look at how low the volume is in here. Even if we zoom out to longer term charts, the volume right now is just dead, guys. I think what happened yesterday, and I think this is really the takeaway from this video on the technical analysis front, is that Bitcoin is feeling kind of dead right now. There's not a whole lot of volume. There's not a lot of exuberance. We saw one news story that changed that for about 12 hours, and now we're kind of back to the same position we were in, because no matter how bullish one news story is, it's not going to reinvigorate the entire market unless it's something absolutely ridiculous. So while this news story of Bakkt that we're about to get into, like I said, was very bullish and is going to be one of the biggest news stories of the year, especially when this launches, hopefully on September 23rd, it's not enough to completely change the landscape of Bitcoin. It's not enough to just bring in new people overnight and bring in hundreds of thousands of new people overnight and millions of dollars to invest into the space and reinvigorate the market. That's why technical analysis is so very important, because news will cause breakouts, but technical analysis drives markets. So with that said, guys, what's going to happen with this pennant before we move on to the news? Guys, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm very bullish on Bitcoin for the next 6 months to 12 months because of this news story and because of many other things. But as far as this pennant right here is concerned, I'm not very bullish on it at this very minute. That might change in the next hour. A big part of the reason why I'm not very bullish on it is because Bitcoin over the last little while has been trading on the bearish side of this, and we did just attempt a breakout of that. Now, to be fair, Bitcoin has been up here testing resistance, but as you can see, the vast majority of the time in the last several hours, ever since this pennant really got formed, the vast majority of the time, Bitcoin's not been trading on the resistance side, guys. It's been trading down here on the support side. And a lot of times, like I say, the more that Bitcoin tests a level of support or resistance, and especially whether or not Bitcoin is moving towards the level of support or resistance and hanging out down around there, is typically a pretty good indication of what's going to happen. Right now, we're trading around the support, so it's probably more likely that we're going to break it, right? And one more thing, guys, I do want to mention this again. The volume is very, very low right now, and a lot of times it's pretty easy to predict a breakout on a consolidation pattern by the volume. If there's a whole lot of volume and there's a lot of volatility in here, it's probably gearing up for a bullish breakout. In some circumstances, that can be signs of bearishness also. But right here, guys, this was a bullish breakout that moved into this consolidation pattern. If this was going to move higher, we would be expecting a lot more volume, a lot more volatility, a lot more interest by retail investors. We would expect a lot of things to be a little bit different. And right now, we're seeing the volume is absolutely stagnant. I'm going to put my money on a bearish break of this, and I'm probably going to short this. We'll see what happens. Of course, we'll have tight stop losses because, you know, you got to be safe. But if we look over here just a couple of days ago, we have a very, very obvious example of what we're talking about. There was a consolidation pattern right here, guys, and I traded this and shorted this and made, like, I don't know, 25% profit on it with leverage. And this was a bearish breakout. We saw Bitcoin crash, and a big reason that we were able to call that in the Discord server was because the volume was absolutely crap. So guys, along with all the other takeaways from this video, take away that volume is very important, and if you see very low volume on a consolidation pattern, many times that means it's going to break bearish. So we'll see what happens. That breakout is almost certainly going to happen today, probably by the time we do tonight's live stream, so we'll do some analysis on that when the time comes. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll be updated when that live stream kicks off, probably sometime later in the afternoon. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and move on to what may be, honestly, the biggest news story of the entire year. And after I dive into this and after I start breaking this down, I think you're going to understand that what I just said is not hype. It's not me exaggerating. It's serious. This is genuine. This is very, very important. Bakkt says it is cleared to launch Bitcoin futures next month. Now, guys, forgive me. I'm going to talk about this news story as if you have no background in Bakkt and have no idea what's going on, because I want to make sure everybody is able to comprehend exactly what's going on here. So we're going to start from the very beginning. I'm going to base this this what I'm talking about off this article, but we're going to get to that in a second. I need to get into some history first. Guys, you have probably heard of the New York Stock Exchange. It's a stock exchange that has nearly $23 trillion of market capitalization and is by far and away the largest stock exchange on the entire planet, and also by far and away the largest stock exchange in America. Guys, I want you to understand just how much money that is. Bitcoin's worth $118 billion. $22,000 billion, which is $22 trillion, divided by $180 billion of market capitalization, says that this one exchange is worth, by market capitalization, over 122 times as much as all of Bitcoin. This is a gigantic exchange, right? Right. So guess who owns the New York Stock Exchange? Guess who owns the largest exchange on the planet? A company named Intercontinental Exchange, herefore to be known as ICE. And guys, ICE launched a company also known as Bakkt. So what that means is that Bakkt is a sister exchange, a sister company to the New York Stock Exchange, which is over 100 times larger than all of Bitcoin by market capitalization. So that's kind of setting the stage for us. ICE owns NYSE, New York Stock Exchange, and they also own Bakkt. This is one of the reasons why this is such a big deal. Let's go ahead and read through part of this, because the reason that this news story has broken is because Bakkt, which let me explain, is a physically based futures market that's launching in New York. And I'll explain what all of those terms mean, because those are important: physically backed, futures, etc. I'll get to that here in just a second. But the point is that Bakkt has been talked about for a long time. It was actually announced almost exactly a year ago, August of last year. Bakkt was announced, and it was one of the biggest news stories in 2018 because of what I've talked about so far and what we're about to get to. But unfortunately, Bakkt's original deadline to launch, which I think was in November or December of last year, kept slipping up, kept slipping by. There was a new deadline, new deadline, new deadline. They weren't hit, they weren't met. And the main reason for that was because Intercontinental Exchange and Bakkt needed approval by the CFTC, the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission, and they couldn't get it. The CFTC just would not give them the regulatory approval that they needed to go ahead and move forward with launching the exchange. So what Bakkt ended up doing is they submitted an application in such a way that if the CFTC did not respond to it, then they would automatically be approved. So now we do have CFTC approval. That's the reason that Bakkt was delayed so many times. If you guys remember, Bakkt kept getting delayed over and over and over and over and over again. Launch dates kept getting pushed back, and a lot of people are going to have the question, well, now we have a launch date from Bakkt, who's to say that won't get pushed back? Guys, the entire reason Bakkt was getting pushed back was because of the CFTC and other regulatory bodies that we're about to talk about not giving approval. Now both of those bodies have. That's what's so important. Bakkt got CFTC approval a little while ago. Before they could launch, they needed to get the New York State Trust Charter through the New York State Department of Financial Services, NYDFS. They needed that before they could launch. And guess what, guys? They now have that. And in a blog post that they released yesterday, they announced that they have that, and they also announced a launch date. The company intends to launch its products on September 23rd. Guys, that's just a little over a month from now that Bakkt, the sister company of NYSE, the sister exchange of NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange, will be launching. So now that you have a little bit of background, let's go ahead and discuss why this is such a big deal. Because guys, this is a huge deal, and if I haven't made it clear so far, I will make it even more clear now. One of the reasons this is such a big deal, guys, is because Bakkt is an institutional exchange. It's an institutional futures, physically backed and physically settled exchange. The reason why that's so important is because there is literally almost $100 trillion of valuation in market capitalization in traditional finance markets. The S&P 500 worth trillions of dollars by market cap. All of these other investment vehicles, all these other companies and stocks and bonds and everything, there are trillions. I mean, trillions with a T, like hundreds of trillions of dollars, tens of trillions, excuse me, of dollars in these markets. And if we can even get a tiny fraction of that, that's going to moon Bitcoin through all-time high and like 10 times higher. You do the math on that, guys. You add a zero to here, you add a zero to here, you have $1.8 trillion. That is pittance compared to what the New York Stock Exchange is worth. Remember, it's worth 122 times what Bitcoin is worth. If you add 1 zero to market capitalization, you add a zero to price also. Keep that in mind. That's $100,000 Bitcoin, and we haven't even reached a 20th of what the New York Stock Exchange is worth, which is only one exchange. So the reason that this is so big is because this is another on-ramp for people that are in traditional finance markets that otherwise would not join cryptocurrency. They wouldn't trust it, they wouldn't believe in it, and they wouldn't want to take the risk on it. But guys, let me put it this way. If you have a favorite company and this company launches another product, you're more likely to go with that product. Let's say that I used this analogy in the live stream yesterday. Let's say you guys really like Starbucks and you also really like coffee. You really like Starbucks coffee. But let's say that you see a new product on the shelf and you're like, nah, I'm not going to try that because I like my Starbucks coffee. But then in the corner of the product, you say, made by Starbucks. You're much more likely to go ahead and buy that product because of brand awareness and because of brand trust. Well, guess what, guys? Anyone who works in the traditional finance markets are probably going to have at least some level of trust for the New York Stock Exchange because of how long it's been around and how much it's worth. And now what they're going to see is that Bakkt is owned by the same people and made by the same people that run the New York Stock Exchange, which means that some of the most valuable brand awareness on the entire planet in any industry is now attached to Bakkt. And what that means, guys, is that not only does Bakkt have a lot of the same brand awareness and brand trust that the New York Stock Exchange has, it also means that the New York Stock Exchange and Bakkt in the future could very easily in the future collaborate and potentially even advertise for each other, and a lot of the traffic in the New York Stock Exchange might go over to Bakkt. Now, there's also one more thing I want to go ahead and mention, and that's the Bitcoin futures that we're looking at here before we get into what physically settled means and why that's so important. If you come in here to BTC USD or Bitcoin, type in Bitcoin futures, then you can actually see the futures that are already on the market through CBOE and CME. You can also just type in Bitcoin 1 exclamation mark and you're going to see the futures chart. And a lot of people point out that the very day that futures launched, that was the beginning of the bear market. So therefore futures must have a gigantic negative impact on the market. And while I'm not necessarily arguing, I do want to make this as kind of a public service announcement. While I'm not necessarily arguing that futures are going to be great for Bitcoin, I also want to make the argument that futures are not necessarily going to just cause a new bear market whenever a new exchange that offers them goes live. A lot of people, like I said, like to point out that the very day futures launched on CME, Bitcoin started its bear market. Literally, it was the very day. It was December 17th. That's the day that Bitcoin started its bear market. You can see here why this chart looks like this, because nothing before this existed. The exchange wasn't live yet. So clearly, if we follow that rationale, then futures must have caused a bear market. Well, guys, I wouldn't agree with that in the slightest. And the reason I wouldn't agree with that in the slightest is because Bitcoin was already in a major rally here. Bitcoin was already moving up to $20,000. It was already overextended, and it already was set up for a future bear market, which did eventually ensue. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into what physically settled means. Physically settled, guys, basically means that this is not a derivative. The futures market that we just looked at is a derivative. It's not physically settled. It's not physically backed. But guess what? Bakkt is physically settled. And that's a very big deal, because what that means is that for Bakkt to get all the Bitcoin that it needs to have these futures trading going on its market, they have to go and buy that Bitcoin from somewhere. And guys, they're probably going to be buying tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, not dollars in Bitcoin, Bitcoin period. That's going to put a ridiculous amount of buying pressure on the market. Even before the buying pressure of hundreds of thousands of millions of new people entering the market adds buying pressure onto the market on top of that. Physically settled means that if you're trading on Bakkt, you are trading real Bitcoin. You have that Bitcoin, it's in a wallet somewhere. There's only so much Bitcoin. There's a supply and demand curve. You guys understand how economics work. Since it's physically settled, that means that Bakkt is physically holding Bitcoin. Now, I mean, they're digitally holding it, but they have the real Bitcoin. It's not a derivative. That's what that means. And that means that Bakkt can very much move the markets, especially if the market's moving to the upside. It can really help to move the market to the upside. Or on the other hand, if the market's moving to the downside, it can help move the market to the downside. Now, guys, this video is getting very long, so there is one more thing that I need to talk about, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer you to go Google it because it's very confusing. I'm not going to get into this video about what exactly a futures contract is. I can try to explain it, but guys, honestly, it's going to take me a while, and it's going to be easier if you just go watch a dedicated video on it. There's some great videos out there. I might even link one in the description down below that explains exactly what a futures contract is, because it's not the same thing as leverage trading. It's not the same thing as margin trading or longing or shorting. It's not like that. It's a completely different kind of trading. I think I'll link a video in the description down below for that. Anyway, guys, this is a huge news story. It's honestly, like I said, one of the biggest news story of the entire year, and this is going to have major ramifications on the market over the next coming years. We saw a little bit of a move from it today. I think this is just the beginning. When it launches, there's probably going to be a pretty large movement in Bitcoin, and from there, it's probably not going to be as obvious what effects Bakkt on-ramps and markets and exchanges are going to be doing for the market, because it's going to be kind of subverse. It's going to be affecting the market every single day in hopefully a bullish way with all these new people moving into the space. So guys, this is a very big deal. It's something that we're going to keep covering here on the channel. Guys, if you did enjoy today's video and you did enjoy hearing about this awesome news story, make sure you smash the like down below, guys. We started a live stream about half an hour yesterday after this breakout happened. I think a lot of people in the live stream actually managed to get in some long trades and make some positions based off of this news because they were able to catch the live stream. So many people, I said, press 1 in chat if you heard about this news story because of this live stream, and there were like 51s, guys. So many people caught this news story right after it broke because I was live streaming on it. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll catch this stuff every time it happens. I will try to do a live stream or some kind of post whenever major news stories happen as soon as I can after they happen. And guys, also remember that we are still running the sale on the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy. Like I said, guys, news does affect the market, but as soon as that news wears off, 12 hours, 24 hours after it's done, technical analysis is the driving factor almost always. It's very important that even if you understand news and you keep up with that, if that's all you do and you don't learn technical analysis, you don't understand the fundamentals of why this market moves the way it does, you're not going to be profitable in this market. Full stop, period. Unless you're investing, you're not going to be profitable. If you want to trade, if you want to day trade, swing trade, you need to understand technical analysis. It's so important, guys. Like I said at the beginning of the video, guys, I don't understand it. There are people that go through that spend $125,000 in college, 4+ years of their life, and they end up working at Starbucks or McDonald's after they get out. And there's nothing wrong with that profession, but hopefully you'd be able to do something more with that degree. And then they come onto YouTube and they say, oh, well, you're scamming me because of a course. Guys, for $159 with the coupon code in the description down below, that's like 1,000th of what you could spent at college. You will learn probably one of the most profitable skills on the entire internet, how to trade cryptocurrency markets. If you're trading these markets, especially if you're very skilled, you know what you're doing, and you're using leverage, you can make a ridiculous amount of money. We had someone in the Discord server the other day go from 0.4 Bitcoin to 2.5 Bitcoin in the span of a 12-hour trading session. Unfortunately, they went back to 0.4 Bitcoin because they didn't lock in their profits, but they made like $20,000 in a day. Guys, there are people in our cryptocurrency server that are well on into millions of dollars in cryptocurrency from trading. We have some people that started from nothing. They started from the bottom, and it's very, very important that they know how to do technical analysis. You talk to any one of them, and they're going to tell you, if I didn't know technical analysis, I would not have known how to make that happen. So guys, I think it's very, very obvious what we have to do. We have to learn about how to do technical analysis, and a great resource to do that is the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy, linked in the description. If you guys are interested, you can join the Discord server and talk to our students. There's a lot of our students in the Discord server. See what they think. I'll go ahead and tell you, they're going to say positive things, I think, because literally every single time anyone talks to them about it, that's what they say. But go and find out for yourself. There's a link to join the Discord down below as well. Anyway, guys, that is pretty much going to wrap it up for today's video. I do hope you did enjoy this longer video. I'm sorry it got out late. That is fully my fault because I slept late. But anyway, guys, like I said, that is going to do it for today's video. I do want to thank each and every single last one of you for watching as always, guys. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.